Hey, what's up everybody and welcome back to Semi Stories. Today's post comes from r/MaliciousCompliance, where OP has to deal with a Karen who just can't live without breakfast. I work at a hotel. I'm on the graveyard shift and we have a continental breakfast from 6 till 9, and my shift ends at 7, so I'm in charge of setting up the breakfast. It's not a big deal, it's a smallish hotel and a small breakfast, but we do have waffles and a couple of waffle makers. Basically, guests come in and they get their batter out of a dispenser and we make their waffles so they're fresh and hot. We have two seasons where I live, winter and construction season, and we get work crews that stay at the hotel on the boss's dime and then go out for whatever job they're working on, and we very frequently get this one crew of guys. They're great guys, they're polite and don't leave the breakfast room a mess, but their shift starts super early in the morning. We also get hunters who are in and out before 6, so I usually have everything set up by 5:30 for them. I say usually because I'm only human. Sometimes I'm running late, it happens. But I'm never more than 5 minutes after 6. The workers and the hunters are super chill about it. They get it and don't complain about waiting a couple extra minutes. I also feel the need to add that the foreman is amongst them, so he's eating when they are. So one day I'm running a little late. I got caught up with what I was doing and kinda lost track of time, so I was rushing to get everything set up while the guys are patiently waiting in the lobby. In enters Karen, who sees the time, sees the breakfast isn't ready, and decides to yell at me for it, saying the sign says it's from 6 till 9 and should be started exactly at 6. I tried to keep working while talking with her so the breakfast could get ready, but she decided that was rude, so I had to stop what I was doing and stand there with her yelling at me until she ran out of breath, and I could finish setting up. Well, Karen was a stayover, and she was in the next day before 6. The manager refunded part of her stay under guest satisfaction, and I think she was hoping to find me doing something wrong again so she could get another refund. But I was on my game and I had everything set up by 5:30 like usual. She came in before the workers and saw me sitting at the front desk and sneered about me being lazy when I should be setting up breakfast. I then told her that breakfast was already ready to go as the construction workers are entering, but I stand and walk over to block the doorway to the breakfast room and tell them that I couldn't let them in because the manager said that I had to start breakfast at exactly 6, so I couldn't let them back in until then. And as I'm saying this, I'm looking directly at Karen. Slowly, heads turn and Karen goes red, and mutters something about coming back later, and then leaves, so I let the guys go in the room. They all said it was funny. And like I said, the workers have had to wait a little after 6 before with no problem. Plus the foreman was there. Just to be clear, if I thought that this stunt was going to cost them their breakfast, I would have never done it. But I knew it wasn't going to be a problem. I didn't see Karen again, so either she didn't come back or she returned after I left. But either way, I didn't hear another word from the manager about it. In this next story, OP is forced to work overtime but is not getting paid for it. I'm currently in the midst of leaving a truly terrible job. I've only been there for a year, but began noticing issues after the first month. Now, this is in healthcare and we work with very vulnerable people. And I have seen some horrendous ethical issues and lack of competency among employees and my employer. Example, permitting clinicians to perform tasks they're not trained in and recommending treatments that are basically pseudoscience. Not to mention my employer has no respect for boundaries or work-life balance, which are essential in this field if you want to avoid a burnout, and it has horrible work-life balance, time management and organizational skills themselves, leading to be behind on all work constantly with over 2,000 emails sitting in their inbox. This also resulted in much of my work being delayed and clients getting upset that they are waiting for things that the employer needs to do. Because of this incompetence, I get constant emails and texts asking me to work on off days, or my employer texting at 8 PM or 7 AM and expecting a reply. I have set very clear boundaries from the start that I don't work outside my hours, and I have also raised concerns about the ethics and competency issues, which resulted in my employer becoming defensive and emotional, and changing nothing. Since giving my notice, the employer has been pushing boundaries even more. So, being the compliant human that I am, and because I need to wrap up things that I've been waiting for my employer to get to for months, I began responding and including every single work-related communication outside of my hours, including requests for small tasks that I need to complete on an off day as hours worked, resulting in some nice banked overtime. Last week, my employer sent an email saying that I'm no longer allowed to work overtime, and every hour worked overtime will be banked as vacation time instead. I don't want that, because if I'm working overtime, I deserve to be paid for it. So I immediately stopped responding to anything after hours or on off days. and have been working only 8 hours on my scheduled days. The frustration and passive aggression coming from my employer since I did that is unmatched. Truly, they should get an award for the snarky and condescending emails and texts they have sent me. I only have a few days left and will be filing an ethics complaint for the many egregious things I have seen once I'm out of there. It's what they deserve, and I can't wait. This one really hits home for me because I also had to work under a very condescending and mean-spirited boss when I first started working. He would tend to also make us work overtime and then force us to take it as vacation days, which we did not want. I think OP did a really good job in handling the situation the best they could. Usually dealing with a boss like this, there is no right way, but reporting the things that they were doing as a company that were not really above board is a very nice way to end it. While I have you guys here, make sure to like and subscribe the video if you want to help the channel out and stay updated on all of our videos. In this next story, OP has to deal with a client who wants to be called first thing in the morning, so that's exactly what he did. Many years ago, I had a very demanding client at work. I was traveling on an assignment, and while I was gone, this person was trying to reach me. She became very upset when she was informed that I was unavailable, and insisted that I return her call first thing in the morning. This was a Thursday, and the next day was a Good Friday. I happened to be aware that she would be off work that day, but we aimed to please. The following morning, I was booked to fly home on a flight that departed at 6 a.m. While sitting in the airport waiting for my flight at 5:15 a.m., I returned her call. The sleepy confusion in her voice as I explained that I understood that she was urgently trying to reach me, so I wanted to make sure to call her before I boarded my flight and became unavailable, made my day. In this next story, OP has to deal with a terrible boss working at a bakery. So this happened when I was a teenager around 18-19 and I worked for this small bakery in my town. It's worth mentioning that I'm a woman. The owner was the worst man I've ever met. He had no business being around people, let alone managing employees. I was a key holder and the sole cashier of the store really early on. I was left alone to run the place and close it every day. He only gave us half an hour breaks for 10-hour shifts. He was racist and homophobic, and frequently made fun of his employees so his buddies could laugh at us when they visited. I can go on and on about this man, but the best summary I can give is that I saw 2 people quit in their first day while working for him. I told him I was leaving 3 weeks in and gave him a week's notice. He of course complained about how unprofessional I, the teenager, was being. I also specifically told him that I will not work the next Saturday. My last day would be Friday. Now, I didn't want to work Saturday because that was sandwich day, the day the entire building stops making cookies and pies and makes sandwiches so that they can be shipped off to other businesses to sell. It was almost the most stressful day because there was too much work and too few people to do it. Also because the store owner, instead of lounging at the front of the store, had to work with me. And he had no respect for personal space. How close he insisted on getting bordered on sexual harassment, and no matter how many times I brought up how uncomfortable I was, he ignored it or interrupted me. So I was not going to work on Saturday. Well, in my last week I reminded him of this a few times, but he never seemed to get it. One day I asked him when I should give my key back, whether I should leave it in the store Friday night or some other time. He interrupted me and said I should give it back at the end of my shift on Saturday. He was convinced that my last day was going to be the dreaded sandwich day instead of Friday. I chose not to correct him. So I didn't. I locked up as usual on Friday, slept in the next morning, and wandered down to the bakery to give my key back. I walked in and it was chaos. Customers were lined up. An employee who usually worked in the back was attempting to man the register and failing, and the owner had gotten off his ass for once and was rushing around making hundreds of sandwiches, red in the face and swearing under his breath. I waved at him, but he made a point not to look away at me. I put my key on the counter and walked out. Turns out he had to sell the bakery a few months later, something about running out of people willing to work. I know I wasn't the catalyst to that particular development, but it's nice to know I helped. I'm really glad OP stood up to her boss like this. I noticed that more and more people, especially from the younger generation, are fed up with the bosses and companies that for years could do whatever they wanted to their employees because they would be afraid to quit. Sometimes you just gotta have the guts to say something, like OP in his next post. About a year ago, I was speaking to my boss about how hard inflation had been hitting me. I asked him if there was a possibility of getting a raise due to the additional responsibilities I now have. If not, I might have to start looking for a new job. My boss proceeded to tell me good luck with my search and that he hopes I get paid how much I feel like I deserve. Now I'm working a job that pays me almost 50% more than what I was paid, with less responsibilities and less stress, while they're struggling to replace me. I hope they find an employee with the skills they feel like they deserve. This right here is, I think, the perfect example why you should just go for something else if you're not getting appreciated at the job you're currently at. And yes, it might be daunting, it might be scary to try something new, but in the end, you'll be a lot happier. What do you guys think? You have any good stories about your workplace? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you next time. See ya!